The cavernous space of the port of entry cargo inspection bay breathes a metallic sigh around you. Salt-laced air, thick with the exhalation of diesel and the distant shriek of gulls, scrapes at the back of your throat. Overhead, the skeletal arms of gantry cranes etch slow arcs against a sky the color of bruised plums, their movements a relentless, grinding symphony. You stand amidst a labyrinth of stacked containers, each a steel tomb holding secrets, some mundane, some illicit. The chill of the concrete floor seeps through the soles of your work boots, a constant, dull ache that mirrors the one settled deep in your chest. Your hands, once deft with the intricate dance of evidence and interrogation, now grapple with the rough canvas straps of a massive wooden crate. Splinters, like tiny accusations, prick your calloused palms. The rhythmic clang of metal on metal from a nearby team inspecting a refrigerated unit is the only punctuation to the silence in your own mind. A ghost of a headline flickers behind your eyes, "Journalist found dead." The words, once emblazoned across every paper, now just a whisper in the wind that whips through this desolate bay. They called it random, a tragic footnote in a city's grim ledger. You knew better. You always knew better. You heave against the crate, muscles protesting with a familiar burn. This is your penance, your self-imposed exile. The honest sweat, the bone-deep fatigue, a blunt instrument to dull the sharper edges of memory. A sudden shift in the ambient hum alerts you. The distant roar of a combustion engine, growing louder, closer. You glance up, your gaze cutting through the haze of industrial dust. A sleek, black sedan, incongruous against the backdrop of rust and grime, glides into the bay, its polished surface reflecting the harsh overhead lights like a shard of obsidian. A figure emerges from the driver's side, tall and impeccably dressed, a stark contrast to the faded work gear you wear. The stranger moves with a familiar confidence, a predatory grace you remember from another life. He carries the air of an executive, a man who commands rather than requests. Your jaw tightens. You recognize the type, if not the face itself. They always find you, eventually. The stranger approaches, his footsteps echoing with an unnerving clarity in the vast space. His eyes, keen and unblinking, sweep over the cargo, over the other workers, before settling on you. There's no surprise in them, only a cool assessment. Marcus Thorne, he states, his voice smooth, carrying easily across the short distance. It's not a question, but a pronouncement. The sound of your full name, and used for so long, feels like a key turning in a locked door. He offers a faint, almost imperceptible smile. I imagine it does. But your real work, the work you were made for, lies elsewhere. He pauses, letting the statement hang in the thick air. We have a mutual acquaintance. That phrase, a brand seared into your professional soul. Your mind immediately leaps to her. The journalist. Always the journalist. I'm out, you say, your voice flat, devoid of inflection. Retired. Disgraced. Some ghosts refuse to be buried. Her file. It's open again. Not by the official channels, of course. You try to extinguish it, to smother it beneath the layers of disillusionment you've carefully constructed. They closed that file years ago. Random act, no leads. That was the official word. The official word often serves to protect the powerful, the stranger counters, his voice laced with a subtle disdain. And the powerful, Marcus, are getting nervous. Especially with an upcoming presidential campaign. loose ends have a way of unraveling entire tapestries. Presidential campaign. The phrase coils in your mind, an unexpected new thread. It pulls at something, a vague, disquieting sensation. This was about something far larger, far more dangerous. The journalist, brilliant and relentless, always digging where others feared to tread. What had she found that was still capable of unsettling the highest echelons? What do you want, you ask, the words sharper now. Your hands no longer passive. I want you to finish what you started, he replies, his eyes holding yours, a silent challenge. I want you to find the truth. The one they buried along with her. This isn't about rejoining the ranks, Marcus. It's about redemption. A chance to right the wrong that broke you. Another layer, another veiled threat. You feel the familiar pull, the insidious lure of a puzzle begging to be solved. It's a dangerous game, one that cost you everything once before. But the mention of redemption, the raw, undeniable truth in his eyes about her case, slices through your carefully built defenses. The weight of the crate in your hands feels insignificant compared to the invisible burden he just placed back on your shoulders. The tension in the air is palpable, a live current humming between you, a silent invitation to walk back into the fire. The word redemption hangs in the air, a phantom limb aching with forgotten purpose. It is a whisper against the roaring silence of your disgrace, a fragile tendril reaching through the concrete of your self-imposed exile. You see it in the man's eyes, not pity, but an understanding that cuts deeper than any accusation. Her case. The ghost that has shadowed your every waking moment, the unsolved puzzle that shattered your world. The lure is insidious, yes, a dangerous game, but the hunger for answers, for a reckoning, gnaws at you with renewed ferocity. You do not speak, but the subtle shift in your posture, the tightening of your jaw, speaks volumes. The man, a silhouette against the industrial haze, offers a slight, knowing nod. The air here is thick with the scent of brine and diesel, a metallic tang that clings to your tongue. Forklifts hum in the distance, their yellow beacons sweeping through the gloom like disembodied eyes. The files, the man says, his voice a low rumble that barely cuts through the industrial drone. Old reports, new intelligence. You hesitate, your hand hovering over the satchel, the weight of its contents already pressing down on you. This is it. The threshold. You could walk away, vanish back into the comforting anonymity you've cultivated. But the image of her face, the brilliant, defiant journalist whose life was snuffed out too soon, flashes behind your eyes. You need to know. You have to know. Your fingers close around the strap, the leather cool and smooth. You pull the satchel closer, a silent acknowledgement of the burden you are once again willing to carry. The man watches, his expression unreadable, then turns and melts back into the labyrinth of containers, leaving you alone amidst the echoing vastness. You find a secluded corner, tucked between a stack of empty crates and a dormant gantry crane, its massive hook poised like a prehistoric bird of prey. The harsh light of a single bare bulb illuminates the grime-streaked floor. You unzip the satchel, the sound a sharp rip in the quiet. Inside, folders spill out, a chaotic tapestry of faded reports, crime scene photos, interview transcripts, and meticulously detailed notes. The scent of aged paper and stale ink fills your nostrils. The first folder you pull out is labeled simply Elias Vance, Case File 007. Elias Vance. You remember the headlines, the official narrative of a random street mugging gone wrong, a narrative you never truly believed, even then. The details, once blurred by time and your own professional downfall, now begin to sharpen, each one a tiny shard of glass reflecting a disturbing truth. You sift through the documents, your eyes scanning for anomalies, for anything that didn't fit the convenient story. An autopsy report detailing a precise, almost surgical wound, not the frenzied attack of a common thief. A witness statement, dismissed as unreliable, mentioning a black sedan idling nearby, its windows tinted opaque. It bore an unfamiliar, intricate crest, a stylized serpent coiling around a scepter. You remember seeing that same crest, years later, subtly emblazoned on campaign literature for the rising politician, the one now vying for the highest office. You flip to an old interview transcript, a conversation with Vance's editor, who spoke of the journalist's final, unfiled story. He was onto something big, Marcus, the editor had said, his voice laced with fear even then. Something about campaign finance, offshore accounts. A network of shell corporations tied to. Well, he wouldn't say. Just the organization. The organization. The very phrase that had brought you back into this dangerous orbit. A tremor runs through your hand as you pull out a more recent document, dated just weeks ago. It's a leaked internal memo from the politician's campaign office, detailing a series of strategic donations from an anonymous holding company. The name of the holding company, though different, had a strikingly similar corporate structure to one Elias Vance had been investigating before his death. The pieces begin to click, not with a satisfying snap, but with a horrifying, deliberate clunk. The subtle connections are no longer subtle. A knot of tension tightens in your gut. This isn't just about redemption anymore. This is about uncovering a truth that someone, somewhere, has gone to great lengths to bury. The screen's cold glow paints the stark lines of the leaked memo across your face, a phantom shadow clinging to your jaw. This isn't just about a dead journalist anymore, it's about the very architecture of power, an edifice you once swore to protect. A tremor, not of fear but of rekindled purpose, courses through your hand as you fold the document. Redemption, they called it. You call it a chance to stare down the beast that swallowed your career whole. The beast that allowed a brilliant mind to be snuffed out and labeled a casualty of circumstance. The cold case gnaws at you, its teeth sharper than ever. You remember the journalist, a firebrand with an uncanny knack for unearthing rot, found broken amidst the industrial sprawl. The official report, a neat package tied with red tape, called it a random mugging, a tragic coincidence. You knew better then, and you know better now. Towering cranes loom like skeletal giants against a bruised sky, their cables groaning under unseen strain. The air hums with the low thrum of distant engines, the sharp clang of metal on metal, and the ceaseless cry of gulls circling overhead, their calls mournful and persistent. This was it. Not the exact spot where the journalist's body was found, but the last confirmed location of their investigation, a place they'd scoured just hours before their final breath. You remember the original scene, the hastily cordoned off area, the flash of forensic lights against the night, the grim faces of your colleagues. You'd felt it then, the wrongness, the carefully constructed narrative already forming in the air. You walked the perimeter, your gaze sweeping over the stacked containers, a kaleidoscope of faded colors and cryptic alphanumeric codes. Each one a potential vessel of truth, or a tomb of secrets. The ground beneath your worn boots is littered with forgotten fragments, rusted bolts, shattered pallets, the slick sheen of spilled oil. A small, ramshackle office, barely more than a shack, sits tucked between two colossal warehouses. Its window, grimy with years of salt spray and dust, offers a skewed view of the bay. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap tobacco. A man, his face a roadmap of weathered lines, looks up from a dog-eared newspaper. He is the old gatekeeper, a fixture here for decades, a man who sees everything but speaks little. Marcus Thorne, you state, your voice cutting through the quiet. His eyes, the color of faded denim, narrow. Ain't seen you around these parts in a long time, detective. Or should I say, former detective. His words are a dull thud, heavy with unspoken history. I'm looking into the journalist's death. The one from years back. The old gatekeeper's gaze drifts towards the window, then back to you. A slow shake of his head. Random act, they said. Shame. His voice is flat, devoid of emotion. Always have. Always will. Nothing unusual round here. Just honest work. The emphasis on honest is a subtle barb, a reminder of your own fall from grace. You sense the implicit warning, the unspoken suggestion that some doors are best left unopened. Leaving the gatekeeper's shack, you find yourself drawn to a rarely used section of the bay, a forgotten corner where disused machinery rusts under a tarp. This area, less frequented, would have offered the journalist a degree of cover, a place to observe without immediate detection. You remember the initial reports. The journalist had been seen sketching, taking notes, always meticulous. You crouch beside a derelict forklift, its paint flaking like sunburnt skin. Your fingers trace the grime-encrusted metal, then dip into a narrow crevice between the forklift's massive tire and the concrete floor. Something rigid. Your heart gives a sudden, sharp lurch. You pull it out. It's a small, weighted brass disc, no bigger than a silver dollar, its surface tarnished with age and exposure. But it's not the age that catches your breath, it's the symbol meticulously etched into its face, a stylized, intertwined knot, intricate and ancient, resembling no known corporate logo or maritime mark. It feels heavy in your palm, imbued with a silent significance. This isn't random. This isn't a trinket. This is a deliberate message, a breadcrumb left for someone to find. The journalist had been close. Too close. This disc, hidden away, suggests a final act of defiance, a desperate attempt to leave a trail. A shiver, not from the biting wind, races down your spine. They want this case buried. And you, Marcus Thorne, are digging it up. The chill of the industrial air, thick with the tang of salt and diesel, clung to your coat. His silence, a fortified wall, seemed impenetrable, yet you felt a tremor beneath the surface, a faint vibration of something withheld. Forklifts, like lumbering metal beasts, trundled with impossible loads. Cranes, skeletal giants, dipped and swayed, their hooks descending into the cavernous holds of ships moored unseen beyond the bay doors. The air vibrated with a low hum, a symphony of commerce and hidden currents. You remembered the journalist's meticulous notes, the half-erased names, the cryptic codes scrawled in the margins of printouts. Your eyes snagged on a manifest tacked to a clipboard near a customs officer's station, a fleeting glimpse as he turned away to answer a crackling radio. The company name, emblazoned in bold, stark lettering, Viridian Dynamics. A jolt, sharp and sudden, coursed through you. Viridian Dynamics. The name resonated with a dull thrum,
a discordant note plucked from the journalist's extensive, yet unfinished, research.
He had been digging into their sudden, meteoric rise, their opaque corporate structure, and their surprising number of contracts with municipal projects, often spearheaded by the very politician now vying for the highest office. This was no coincidence. You moved closer, a phantom in the organized chaos, pretending to scan the general activity while your peripheral vision locked onto the manifest. The manifest detailed a shipment of industrial-grade polymers from a port notorious for lax oversight.
But beneath the generic description, a smaller, almost unnoticeable code was printed: Chimera Alpha.
The journalist's Project Chimera. It wasn't just a name, it was a classification. Your mind raced, piecing together fragments. This wasn't about simple corruption, this was about control, about manipulating the flow of essential resources, perhaps even data, under the guise of legitimate trade. The scale of it, hinted at by the sheer volume of containers bearing the Viridian Dynamics insignia, was staggering. Just as you reached out, your fingers brushing the laminated surface of the manifest, a deafening screech tore through the air. It was coming straight for you, too fast, too close. There was no time for thought, only instinct. You threw yourself sideways, a desperate lunge, your shoulders slamming into a cold metal support beam. The force of its passage sent a gust of wind tearing at your clothes, carrying with it the acrid smell of burning rubber. You hit the concrete floor hard, the impact jarring your teeth, the air knocked from your lungs. A searing pain bloomed in your shoulder, but you ignored it, scrambling backward, your eyes fixed on the retreating machine. It didn't stop, didn't even slow, disappearing around another stack of containers as if nothing had happened. The driver never looked back. This was no accident. The trajectory, the timing, the sheer speed, it was too precise, too deliberate. Someone had seen you looking at the manifest, and sent a clear, brutal message. You were treading on dangerous ground, uncovering threads that powerful hands wanted to remain buried. You pushed yourself to your feet, every muscle protesting, a dull ache throbbing in your shoulder. They knew you were here. They knew you were looking. And now, you knew they were real. The politician, Viridian Dynamics, Project Chimera, the journalist had been onto something monumental, something worth killing for. And now, you were too. The game had just begun, and the stakes were higher than you could have ever imagined. You brushed off the dust and grime, your gaze hardening, scanning the immense bay for any sign of another watcher. There was none, only the ceaseless, indifferent rhythm of the port. You had what you came for. Now, you needed to get out. Towering stacks of shipping containers, like colossal, rust-pocked dominoes, lined the docks, their metallic skin glinting dully under the overcast sky. The persistent clang of forklifts and the guttural roar of distant ship engines formed a discordant symphony, a soundtrack to the endless churn of global commerce. You moved through it all, Marcus, a shadow amidst the giants, guided by the fragmented whispers of a dead journalist's unfinished research. Her notes had pointed to a specific consignment, tucked away within the labyrinthine logistics of Viridian Dynamics, a shipment flagged with a cryptic alphanumeric code. It felt like chasing smoke, but desperation had a way of sharpening the senses. An old contact, a port security supervisor whose weary eyes held the ghosts of forgotten favors, had granted you a sliver of access, a brief window into the digital ledger. He hadn't asked many questions, merely offered a curt nod and pointed you towards a specific section of the bay, a quiet understanding passing between you. You found the container, a standard 20-foot unit, its seals intact, its exterior unremarkable save for the Viridian Dynamics logo stenciled in stark black. A quick scan of the manifest confirmed its mundane contents: industrial lubricants, declared and accounted for. Yet, the journalist's intuition, echoing through her frantic scribbles, had insisted on its significance. Your gut, a seasoned, scarred oracle, resonated with her unease. Accessing the container required more than a glance. The supervisor had, with a sigh that spoke volumes, provided a key, citing a random spot check on the manifest. The heavy latch groaned in protest as you unsealed it, the metallic shriek echoing in the vast bay. Inside, the stacked barrels of lubricant gleamed under the sparse illumination, an innocent facade. But you knew better. You had learned, long ago, that the most dangerous secrets often hid in plain sight, camouflaged by the mundane. Your gloved hands moved with practiced precision, tapping, listening, searching for the hollow resonance, the subtle imperfection that betrayed concealment. It took time, your breath fogging in the cool, damp air, your senses alert to every nuance of sound and texture. Then, near the rear wall, behind a false panel expertly secured with industrial-grade bolts, you found it. Not a large cavity, but a compact, almost artful deception. Prying open the hidden compartment revealed not the expected narcotics or weaponry, but a single, sleek device nestled within custom-fitted foam. There was an undeniable sophistication to its design, a silent declaration of advanced engineering. And then you saw it. Etched into the alloy, almost imperceptible without the focused beam of your penlight, was a 7-digit serial number. And beneath it, a symbol, a stylized falcon, wings spread, clutching a lightning bolt. The air thickened, the distant clatter of the port fading into a muffled hum. That symbol. The falcon with the lightning bolt. It was the unofficial emblem of Project Chimera, a clandestine government initiative from years ago, ostensibly designed to develop cutting-edge secure communication protocols. A project shrouded in secrecy, steeped in rumors, and ultimately, one that imploded spectacularly. Your project. Your breath hitched. You remembered the internal report, the hushed inquiries, the lives lost, the careers ruined. Your own among them. You had been the lead investigator assigned to uncover the truth behind Chimera's sudden collapse, the alleged theft of its prototypes, and the subsequent cover-up. You had found nothing concrete, only dead ends and systemic obfuscation. The official conclusion, a catastrophic design flaw, leading to data corruption and the loss of critical assets. Your failure to recover any of the prototypes had been a significant contributing factor to your eventual dismissal, a stain on your record that time had never truly bleached. But here it was. One of the Chimera prototypes, precisely as described in the classified blueprints you had once reviewed. Not destroyed, not corrupted, but smuggled. And by Viridian Dynamics, the company the journalist had been investigating, the company now linked to a prominent politician. The pieces clicked into place with an agonizing clarity, a mosaic of betrayal and deceit spanning years. Your thumb traced the stylized falcon, a tremor running through your hand. The serial number. You knew it. Knew it intimately, not just from the classified reports, but from a specific evidence log entry, one you had personally cross-referenced, one that had been signed off by a former colleague. A friend. A man you had trusted implicitly during your time on the force, a diligent evidence technician whose meticulous nature you had often praised. He had been the last to handle the records pertaining to the Chimera prototypes, the one who had stamped the final secured and accounted for on the ledger, despite your lingering doubts. You had trusted him. The cold metal of the device felt suddenly like a brand. This was a direct assault on your past, a brutal reopening of wounds you thought had scarred over. The betrayal, sharp and unexpected, twisted in your gut, a new kind of sickness. The hunt for justice had just become achingly, terrifyingly personal. The persistent clang of forklifts echoed, a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat against the vast, open expanse. Each breath you took tasted of salt and industry, a raw edge against your tongue. You moved with a practiced economy, your gaze sweeping over the corrugated steel behemoths. The manifest, a flimsy printout clutched in your gloved hand, listed a consignment of agricultural equipment destined for a shell company you traced back to the politician's inner circle. It was thin, almost transparent, a thread of suspicion woven into a tapestry of legitimate trade. But you felt it, a faint vibration in the labyrinth of your gut, the one that had always hummed before a breakthrough. A junior officer, young and eager, jogged to your side. "Marcus, we've cleared Sector Gamma. Nothing out of place. Every bolt, every weld, accounted for." His voice was a flat report, devoid of the simmering impatience that gnawed at your own resolve. You barely acknowledged him, your eyes fixed on a specific container, number 734C. It sat near the perimeter, slightly apart from the main cluster, almost as if deliberately segregated. The paint on its flank was a faded navy, scratched and scarred by countless journeys across the churning oceans. "Focus on 734C, you commanded, your voice a low rasp against the din. "Strip it. Every panel. Every seam. I want to know what's inside its walls, not just its cargo." The officer's brow furrowed. "But the scanner read clean. And the seals are intact, Marcus." "Seals can be reapplied. Scanners can be fooled," you countered, your gaze unwavering. The journalist, their last known contact was with a source at a shipping company. "This container, this company, it's too neat." Under your relentless direction, a small team began the painstaking process. Torches flared, cutting through the thick steel. The metallic shriek of stressed rivets, then the groan of protesting panels, filled the air. Sweat beaded on your forehead, a cold trickle against your temple, despite the biting wind whipping off the water. You watched, hawk-eyed, as the outer skin of the container was slowly peeled back, revealing layers of insulation, then more steel. Then, a glint. Not the dull gray of the container's interior, but something darker, almost obsidian. A small, perfectly concealed compartment, no larger than a shoebox, nestled between the structural beams, expertly welded into place. The junior officer whistled low. "Well, I'll be. No X-ray would have picked that up. Get it open." Carefully, you instructed, your voice tight with anticipation. A pry bar slid into a hairline seam. A sharp crack, then the small hatch sprung open, revealing a meticulously sealed, waterproof pouch. Your fingers, steady despite the tremor of adrenaline, reached in. Inside, nestled amongst desiccant packets, was a single, sleek USB drive. You retreated to the makeshift command post, a battered trailer parked a safe distance from the heavy machinery, the constant thrum of the port still vibrating through the thin walls. Your portable decryption kit, a compact device humming softly, connected to the drive. The screen flickered to life, a stark white against the gray interior. Passwords, layers of them, scrolled past. Each time, your fingers danced across the keyboard, a memory, a hunch, a pattern from your past cases guiding you. The journalist had been meticulous, almost obsessively so. They wouldn't have just left information lying around. They would have encoded it with something personal, something only they would remember. A name. A date. The anniversary of their first major scoop. You typed it in. The screen flashed. Access granted. A deluge of data flooded the display. Financial ledgers. Encrypted emails. Coded messages. Names, stark and unambiguous, began to populate the screen. A sprawling web of transactions, untraceable payments funneled through offshore accounts, all leading back to a single, insidious entity, the syndicate. Not a street gang, but a clandestine network of influence peddlers, power brokers, and silent enforcers, operating from the gilded cages of the city's elite. And there it was. One entry, dated just days before the journalist's murder, stood out like a jagged shard of ice. Journalist, Project Nightingale. Exposure imminent. Neutralization required. The air in the trailer grew still, thick with the weight of revelation. The noise of the port outside faded, replaced by the deafening roar in your ears. This was about the rot at the heart of the city, a cancer that had metastasized into the highest echelons of power. The politician wasn't just involved, they were a central figure, pulling the strings of a murderous enterprise, using their campaign as a shield. The ghost of your past failure, the case that had cost you everything, finally had a name, a face, a mechanism. The journalist hadn't been a random act of violence, they had been executed to protect this very conspiracy. And the failure hadn't been yours alone, it had been engineered, obscured by the very power you were now facing. This wasn't a choice anymore. It was an imperative. The path ahead was fraught with peril, a treacherous ascent against an enemy with limitless resources and no moral compass. They had taken your badge, your reputation, almost your sanity. They had murdered a truth seeker. Now, you would expose them. Every fiber of your being, every scar on your soul, committed to this singular, unforgiving purpose. The cost, whatever it might be, was irrelevant. You would see this through. Inside, nestled among a thin layer of silica gel packets, lay a single, compact data chip and a folded, yellowed newspaper clipping. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping cold steel and worn leather, trembled just slightly as they closed around the objects. The chip, no bigger than a thumbnail, felt cool and inert, yet radiated a silent power. The clipping, dated years ago, was from a local gazette, its headline stark, "Journalist's Death Ruled Tragic Accident." A small, almost imperceptible handwritten note in the margin snaked down your spine. This was it. To have their final, defiant message reduced to a single cryptic line, hidden away like this, spoke volumes of the forces at play. You slipped the chip and clipping into your pocket, the weight of them a sudden, heavy burden. The small hatch clicked shut, disappearing once more into the seamless metal of the cargo container. A quick scan of the cavernous bay revealed only the usual symphony of industry, the distant clang of moving freight, the rumble of a forklift, the low hum of unseen machinery. But a prickle on the back of your neck, an instinct honed over years of navigating treacherous waters, warned you that the silence was about to break. Before you could even formulate an exit strategy, the harsh, metallic shriek of an alarm tore through the air, echoing off the corrugated steel walls. Red warning lights strobed to life, painting the vast space in an urgent, pulsating glow. The distant rumble of the forklift abruptly ceased. A voice, amplified and distorted, boomed from unseen speakers. Lockdown initiated. All personnel, secure your positions. Unauthorized access detected in Sector Gamma 7. Your sector. Your breath hitched. They knew. The moment you touched that pouch, the moment the seal broke, a silent signal must have been sent. Your mind raced, assessing the layout. Containers stacked like monolithic dice towers, narrow aisles, the distant glint of the main exit. Not enough time for subtlety. Move, Marcus, you muttered to yourself, the words a guttural command. You sprinted, a phantom in the strobe-lit labyrinth, weaving between colossal crates, their labels hinting at destinations across the globe. Footsteps, heavy and numerous, began to pound in your wake, accompanied by the sharp, metallic click of weapons being readied. They weren't just security, they were hunters. A burst of static from a handheld radio, followed by a clipped voice, reached your ears. He's heading for docking bay C, cut him off. Your heart hammered a frantic rhythm against your ribs, not from fear, but from the raw surge of adrenaline. Every instinct screamed for evasion. You saw a narrow service ladder bolted to the side of a towering stack of crates. The height offered a momentary advantage, a bird's-eye view of the unfolding pursuit below. From your perch, you could see the main doors to docking bay C, now sealed shut by a massive, reinforced barrier. A dead end. You cursed silently. Their intelligence was too good, their reaction too swift. This was not the clumsy chase of a local force, this was the methodical hunt of a well-oiled machine. You swung yourself onto the top of a container, the rough metal grating beneath your worn boots. Below, the pursuers exchanged terse commands, their voices echoing. A sharp crack, then a bullet whizzed past your ear, embedding itself with a thud into a container wall. They were firing to disable, to stop, not necessarily to kill yet. They wanted what you had. The air here was still, heavy with the scent of dust and forgotten cargo. Your breath came in ragged gasps, but your mind was lucid, sharp. The data chip, warm in your pocket, felt like a burning ember. This chip, you knew, contained the truth the journalists died for, the truth the politicians' campaign sought to bury. It was the missing link, the final piece of the mosaic. And now, possessing it, you were no longer just a disgraced detective seeking redemption, you were a target, a fugitive, hunted by an unseen hand that reached into the highest echelons. The rhythmic thud of approaching boots grew louder, closer. They were systematically sweeping the bay, closing in. You pressed your back against the cold metal, your hand instinctively going to the worn pistol tucked into your waistband. But open confrontation here, against this many, was suicide. You needed to disappear, to become a phantom once more. A faint, almost imperceptible hum reached your ears from the container beside you. A refrigerated unit, its compressor cycling. The door, you noticed, was secured with a heavy, yet hastily applied, padlock. A desperate gamble, but your options were dwindling. With a swift, practiced motion, you drew your lock-picking tools, the small metallic implements glinting in the faint emergency light filtering into your hiding spot. Your fingers, nimble despite the urgency, worked with a familiar precision. The click of the tumblers, soft yet distinct, was music to your ears. The padlock sprang open. It was a risky move, a gamble on remaining undetected within the very belly of the beast. But as the footsteps drew nearer, and the beam of a tactical flashlight swept past your hiding place, you knew you had no other choice. The game had just escalated. You were no longer hunting, you were being hunted. And the only way out was through the heart of the conspiracy. Your fingers, raw and scraped, found purchase on the cold metal rung. The scent of brine and diesel fuel clung to the air, a metallic tang that sharpened your senses. You scaled the service ladder with a desperate grace, muscles screaming in protest, each hoist a testament to a will forged in the crucible of past failures. Above you, the stacked containers formed a labyrinthine cityscape of steel, a temporary sanctuary from the immediate threat. You pulled yourself onto the corrugated roof of a towering crate, your breath ragged, chest heaving. From this elevated perch, the inspection bay unfolded beneath you like a grim diorama. Forklifts, like mechanical beasts, sat dormant, their tines gleaming under the harsh industrial lights. Shadows stretched long and distorted, dancing with the distant flicker of welding torches from another section of the docks. Two figures, broad and unyielding, moved with practiced menace between the colossal containers. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, sweeping arcs of light that narrowly missed your hiding spot. They were not searching randomly, their movements suggested a grim certainty, a methodical hunt. Your gaze, however, was drawn not to your pursuers, but to the container directly beneath you. It was a standard shipping unit, but something about its seal felt off, too new, too perfectly applied over what looked like older, weathered paint. The urgency of the moment warred with the need for discovery. As the heavy footsteps receded, their beams of light fading into the distant maze of cargo, you slid down the side of your temporary refuge. Your boots landed softly on the concrete floor. The air was thick with the smell of treated wood and sea salt. You ran your gloved hand along the seam of the suspicious container. The serial number was partially obscured by a fresh layer of sealant. With a small, specialized pry tool from your kit, a relic from your past life, you carefully worked at the edge of the seal. It gave with a faint crack, barely audible over the hum of the distant machinery. Behind the outer panel, a cleverly concealed compartment revealed itself. It was small, no larger than a briefcase, lined with dense foam. Inside, nestled amongst the protective material, lay two items. The first was a sleek, encrypted data drive, its indicator light a faint, steady blue. The second was a slim, leather-bound ledger, its pages edged in gold, an anachronism in this industrial setting. Your fingers trembled as you picked up the ledger. The paper felt heavy, expensive. You flipped it open to a random page. It wasn't a standard accounting book. Instead, it was filled with meticulously handwritten entries, dates, coded names, and numerical sequences that, even without full context, reeked of illicit transactions. One name, however, leaped out at you, stark and undeniable: Project Chimera, Senator Thorne. No, not your name, but the politician's. Marcus Thorne. The prominent politician. The coincidence was a cruel twist, a mockery of your own disgraced past. It wasn't just money laundering, it was a blueprint for influence peddling, a web of political favors exchanged for unimaginable wealth. This was it. The undeniable proof. You slipped the drive and the ledger into a waterproof pouch, securing it inside your jacket. The weight of it was both a burden and a powerful shield. The truth, finally tangible, pressed against your skin. But the discovery had taken time, precious moments that had allowed your pursuers to regroup. A sudden, sharp whistle cut through the air, closer this time. The rhythmic thud of boots was back, augmented by the distant growl of an engine.
They were tightening the net.
You moved, not with panic, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The proof was yours, now, you had to get it out. You scaled a stack of lumber, then dropped onto a flatbed truck loaded with crates of electronics.
The truck was parked near an egress point, its engine idling softly. A quick glance revealed the driver's door was ajar. A fleeting opportunity, a dangerous gamble. You slid into the driver's seat, your eyes scanning the mirrors. The two enforcers emerged from between two containers, their flashlights sweeping the area where you had just been. With a silent prayer, you jammed the truck into gear. The heavy vehicle lurched forward, its diesel engine roaring to life, shattering the relative quiet. The two figures shouted, their voices swallowed by the sudden din, and began to run after you. You accelerated, the truck gaining speed, rattling over the uneven concrete. A security gate loomed ahead, its arm down. No time for finesse. You braced yourself, gripping the wheel, and plowed through it. The gate splintered with a deafening crash, showering sparks and debris. You were out. You drove until the port lights were a distant glow, until the salty air gave way to the exhaust fumes of the city. You found a deserted, abandoned factory on the outskirts, its windows shattered, its corrugated roof gaping to the sky. Inside, the silence was profound, broken only by the drip of unseen water. You pulled out the drive, plugging it into a small, portable decryptor. The screen flickered, then displayed a torrent of data, encrypted messages, financial ledgers, and a series of high-resolution photographs. One photograph stood out, a grainy image taken covertly. The figure's face was partially obscured, but the distinctive watch on his wrist, and the cut of his expensive suit, were unmistakable. It was Marcus Thorne, the politician. The journalist had met him, likely days before her death. The full scope of the conspiracy unfurled before you, a monstrous tapestry woven with ambition, deceit, and murder. You had the proof, the undeniable, irrefutable evidence. But holding it meant you were a target, a loose end to be snipped. They would come for you. And Marcus Thorne, the politician, would not simply surrender. He would fight, using every resource at his disposal, every lever of power he commanded. You couldn't just leak this, it would be buried, dismissed as a smear campaign. You had to force his hand, draw him out into the open, into a confrontation where the truth could not be denied. You pulled out your burner phone, the cheap plastic worm in your hand. You composed a single, terse message, addressed to a contact who would ensure it reached the politician directly, and only him. I have the ledger. I have the drive. The truth about Project Chimera and the journalist's murder is now mine. Meet me. Tomorrow. Midnight. The old clock tower. Alone. Or the world sees everything. You hit send. The words hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown. You knew, with every fiber of your being, that you were walking into a trap. But you also knew, with an equal, unyielding conviction, that this was the only way. The stage was set. The final act was about to begin. Downfall you were trying to escape. As the alarm shrieked, echoing through the empty facility, you knew he wouldn't kill you here. Not when discrediting you served a greater purpose. The stakes had just been raised, confirming that Ilara's SG wasn't just a shadowy corporate entity, but a ruthless organization willing to use any means necessary to protect its secrets.
They were watching you, Marcus, a silent, pervasive threat that tightened its grip around your throat. Your identity as a disgraced detective was being weaponized against you, a constant reminder of the fragility of your pursuit of truth. The encounter at Stone's Haven, the chilling precision of the trap, confirmed that the Sovereign Group was not merely a financial entity but a network of operatives, highly organized and ruthless. They knew your every move, perhaps even your every thought. The question gnawed at you: how? You returned to your apartment, the alarm screech still ringing in your ears, the metallic tang of fear on your tongue. You re-examined Ilara's notebook, searching for anything you might have missed, any clue to the source of their omniscience. Her notes on identity management and migrant flow kept resurfacing. You remembered the missing migrant family case from years ago, the one that had contributed to your disgrace. A family had vanished without a trace, and you, overwhelmed by personal demons, had dismissed it as a simple border crossing gone wrong, a case quickly overshadowed by the sensationalism of Ilara's murder investigation. You had been too blinded by your own internal turmoil to see the connections, too eager to close the file and move on. Ilara Vance had been investigating that very family, their disappearance linked to a charitable program run by a newly formed entity, one of the Sovereign Group's early fronts, which operated out of a temporary holding facility in the very same district as Stone's Haven. Your past failure wasn't just a personal demon, it was a missing piece of Ilara's puzzle, a crucial link you had overlooked. The identity of the victims, their forgotten stories, now screamed for justice. The betraying sting came not from a stranger, but from a familiar face. You sought out the chief, your former mentor, the man who had always believed in you, even in your darkest hours. He was now retired, living a quiet life in a suburban home, tending to his rose garden. You found him there, pruning a vibrant red bloom, his face weathered but his eyes still sharp. "Marcus," he said, a genuine warmth in his voice, a stark contrast to Miller's coldness. "It's been too long. What brings you out to the land of the living?" You sat on his porch swing, the scent of roses cloying in the air. Ilara Vance. Stone's Haven. The Sovereign Group. His hand, holding the pruning shears, stilled. "It's dangerous, son. Let it go." He was investigating the missing migrant family, you pressed, watching his reaction closely. "The ones from the charitable program. The same year I dropped the ball." He sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound. "That was a difficult time for you, Marcus. For all of us. Those cases. They're complicated. The border, the politics. It was messy. Messy, or covered the air in the port of entry cargo inspection bay tasted of salt and diesel, a metallic tang that bit at your tongue. Giant gantries loomed like skeletal titans against the bruised twilight, their cables humming a low, mechanical dirge. Forklifts, parked in neat rows, cast long, distorted shadows under the sparse, yellow-tinged lights. You stepped further into the cavernous space, your footsteps echoing hollowly against the concrete floor, each sound a deliberate, defiant punctuation in the vast silence. You saw him then, standing beside a stack of sealed shipping containers, his posture radiating an easy authority that belied the grim circumstances. The politician. His tailored suit, a stark contrast to the grime and grit of the bay, seemed almost a costume. This was the trap, yes, but you had woven your own threads into its fabric. You believe you hold something, don't you? The politician continued, a faint smile playing on his lips. A truth that will unravel everything. But truth, Marcus, is a malleable thing. Easily reshaped, easily buried. Not this truth, you countered, your voice steady, a steel cord vibrating in the vast space. This truth has roots, deep and tangled, reaching back to a journalist's final breath. They were killed because they found the missing link. The connection between your presidential campaign, the charitable organizations funding it, and the illicit network operating out of these very docks. You pulled a small, encrypted data chip from your pocket, holding it between your thumb and forefinger. This contains it all. Ledgers, manifests, coded communications. They used this port, its labyrinthine procedures, its constant ebb and flow of cargo, as their personal conduit. The politician's eyes narrowed, the facade of calm cracking further. And you believe this flimsy evidence will stand? Against my influence? Against my people? He gestured subtly to the enforcer, who began to move, a slow, predatory advance. It will, you affirmed, because I didn't send it to just one contact. I sent it to 3. Encrypted, with a dead man's switch. If I don't check in by a predetermined time, the full unencrypted data dump, along with this location, goes public. The politician's face, usually so composed, contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. The enforcer hesitated, his hand hovering near a concealed weapon. The trap had sprung. The bait was booby-trapped. You bluff, the politician snarled. The conviction was gone from his voice. Do I? You allowed a ghost of a smile to touch your lips. The journalist found the coded ledgers in a forgotten storage unit, a relic from one of your early, less cautious ventures. They knew about the red tide, your code for the flow of illicit funds. They were about to expose the entire operation, the human cost, the corruption that bled into every corner of your ambition. You sanctioned their death to protect your ascent. You thought it was a clean sweep, a loose end tied. But they left a breadcrumb, Marcus Thorne, a piece of a puzzle only you, with your own history of failure and obsession, could piece together. A new sound pierced the heavy air, the distant wail of sirens, growing steadily louder, closer. The politician's eyes darted towards the bay entrance, then back to you, a venomous hatred burning in their depths. The enforcer, now visibly agitated, drew a heavy automatic from his jacket. This changes nothing, Thorne, the politician hissed, his voice tight with fury. Even if they come for me, the organization runs deeper. Figures in tactical gear, led by the familiar, stoic face of the detective, burst through the main entrance. The politician's enforcer, seeing the overwhelming force, hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon, a snarl of defeat twisting his features. You watched as the detective moved, efficient and decisive, securing the politician and his operative. The chaos of the moment washed over you, a sudden, exhilarating release of tension. The years of gnawing guilt, the phantom echo of that unsolved case, the weight of your badge being ripped away, it all began to lift, a heavy shroud finally dissolving in the harsh, fluorescent glare. Later, in the quiet aftermath, as the bay slowly emptied of the official presence, the detective approached you. You played a dangerous game, Marcus. It was the only game left, you replied, your gaze sweeping across the containers, the silent witnesses to a long overdue reckoning. The journalist deserved justice, and I.
I needed to see it done.
The detective nodded, a rare hint of respect in their eyes. The data you sent, even the preliminary encrypted package, was enough to warrant the raid. Your dead man's switch was a credible threat. They're already tracing the accounts, uncovering the shell companies. This is big, Marcus. Bigger than anyone suspected. You felt a weariness settle deep in your bones, but it was a different kind of exhaustion than you'd known before. Not the soul-sucking despair of failure, but the profound fatigue of a battle fought and won. But a significant blow had been struck. A truth, once buried, had been exhumed and brought into the unforgiving light. The politician would face the consequences. The journalist's name would finally be cleared of the ignominy of a random, meaningless death. And you, Marcus Thorne, had walked through the fire of your past, not unscathed, but transformed. The future remained an unwritten page, an uncertain path stretching before you. There was no badge waiting, no triumphant return to the force. The world hadn't suddenly become a pristine landscape of justice. You had done what you set out to do. You had found a measure of peace, forged in the crucible of your own determination, and a purpose that transcended the uniform. The Sultan diesel still clung to the air, but now, it carried a faint, almost imperceptible scent of redemption.